Greetings and welcome to this beginner's guide for the summoner for Final Fantasy XIV Stormblood. This took about a week extra time that I needed in order to get things properly done because like what happened with what was the last class I did? The Black Mage? The Bard, I think? Yeah. There isn't exactly a set-in-stone rotation for this class, and many of the guys I found were outdated with abilities I no longer had, or were based on information from release date of Stormblood, so around 6 months ago-ish. So with that in mind, I had to take myself an entire week to actually figure out the class and figure out what I needed to be doing in order to do as much damage as possible. So with that in mind, we're going to go over this. I'm going to tell you what I figured out, the basic abilities, and all the other stuff. And remember, just like with every other one of my videos, this is not a maximum DPS guide, but just a guide to get you started on the class, and you should probably just use this as a base and not as a be-all end-all guide for this class. So, let's get into the abilities, shall we? So, without further ado, we're going to do this a little different this time. Here we have all of our abilities. I can't make this bigger, unfortunately, but anyway, as you can see, we start with Little Ruin here. This is basically your most basic spell, and you're going to be using it throughout the entire career as a summoner, so don't forget it. This is, over here we have Bio, our very first dot, one of two. This is also very important. Here, at level 4, you get your first summon, which is, as you can see, it says a caster type. Now, before you actually become a summoner, and when you're an Arcanist, I believe that's the name of that class, this summons a carbuncle thingamajig. Now, once you become a summoner, you get, no, not Ifrit, you get a little Garuda-like pet here. Doesn't really look like her at all. My little wind-up Garuda looks a lot more like her. This thing here. It isn't particularly good looking, honestly, but that's what we got. After that, we get Psychic. This is basically a basic heal. Once you move into the summoner class, this heal will not be good enough to save you from anything. For example, if I use it right now on myself, I was healed for only 642 at level 70, and things usually hit you for around 1,500, so it basically becomes useless as you go up in levels. This is only there as the basic heal for the Scholar class, which also comes from the Arcanist. Then, Ether Flow. This is one of the most important abilities and one of the things that defines the Summoner class. Now, as you can see, when you use it, it restores 10% of your maximum MP, which isn't really the important part. The important part is that it gives you Ether Flow. Now, Ether Flow is used to use some very specific abilities. Those being this Energy Drain, which is has a potency of 150, so that's 50 more than your base Ruin spell here. So that's one of its uses. Then another one of its use we're going to see later on, and it becomes a very important part of our quote-unquote rotation because it's the key mechanic of level 1 to 50. Then what else we have? We already went over Energy Drain. And then we have Miasma. This is our second dot, and it lasts 24 seconds, which is not a very nice duration. But as you go up in levels, Miasma and Bio get longer duration, so it becomes a lot less hectic. Then Summon 2 becomes our tank type pet. When you're an Arcanist, it's just another carbuncle. But as you level up in levels, you get some kind of rock thing that's supposed to kind of look like Titan. That thing. So if you look at it from the front, it kind of looks like Titan. That's the little face and the hair it usually has, so it's okay, I guess. Not particularly good looking, honestly. Sustain, this becomes very important to you as you level up, as you go through Paths of the Dead or the story mode, and even later on the levels, because this, as you can see, will restore, from what I can see, anywhere between 16 and 20% of your pet's HP over 9 seconds. This is very useful if you're questing because things will eventually start hitting very, very hard. Now, Resurrection, we have this because, as I mentioned earlier, the Arcanist is also the base class for the Scholar, so all healers need a Resurrection, but the fact that we have it means that we can actually help out in raids and instantly res somebody that died if we grab the Swift Cast from the roll over here. Then we've got Bio 2, an upgrade on the Bio, as I mentioned before. As you can see, it went up to 30 seconds, up from 18, which is a lot nicer. Then Bane. This is only your second ability that uses Ether Flow. Well, Ether Flow, as you can see, I'm going to use it right now. And then it gave you this. In the beginning, you're only going to have one crystal, and as you level up, you're going to get 3 more. Now this ability, Bane, is one of the most important ones you have. As you can see, spreads a target's bio and miasma effects to nearby enemies. So generally in dungeons, what you want to do is get your 2 dots on the biggest thing and then use Bane to spread it to everybody else. However, as you can see, potency is reduced by 20% for the second enemy and so on and so forth, down to 80% reduced potency. So everything else will take a lot reduced damage from the main thing. So yeah. Now duration, time remaining on the original effect, which is why you want to use it as soon as you get the dots on them. And then additional effect, 50% chance that bio and miasma duration resets if shorter than original effect duration. So if you cast it on some, basically always, honestly, it has a chance to reset the duration on it to its maximum duration, which is nice. It's a little something, but it's okay. Then Ruin 2, as you can see, compared to the Ruin 1, this one is instant, and also has a potency of 100. So the exact same potency. The difference is that later on in the levels, once you actually become a summoner, Ruin 1, this one here, gets upgraded to Ruin 3, which adds a potency of 130. And as you can see, no cast time while in Dreadworm stance. We'll go over that later. Well, in a few minutes actually. Then Rouse. This is one of the abilities that increases your DPS significantly. And the reason is because we're summoners and we have pets, very similar to World of Warcraft's Warlock, which is basically what we are. The pet is a very big factor in our DPS. Now, as you can see, increases healing magic potency and damage dealt by pet by 40% while roused. Pet will be immune to stun, sleep, blind, and heavy, and it lasts for 20 seconds. Now, later on, we get a passive that I believe helps reduce that to 10 seconds but after certain things happen. So keeping this on cooldown when you're in battle is very important, so your pet is always doing as much damage as possible. Shadow Flare. This is a little dot we put on the ground and apparently it's slowed by 5%, which is honestly kind of pathetic. But as you can see, a designated area in the Veil of Magic Shadows dealing magic damage with a potency of 50 to any enemies who enter. So this does a base 50 dot to anything that's inside and looks pretty nifty. It looks like that. Yeah, it's that big shadowy thing that you see in dungeons all the time. Now we get into the summoner class proper. So as you can see, the first thing we get is Summon 3. Now this is what changes our regular carbon. Actually, you don't get this until summoner, so this summons your best DPS pet. So this is our little mini Ifrit, we'll call him. Now, based on the abilities that he is actually the best pet for single target damage. I'll go over that once we go past roles and go into the traits and everything else. After that, we get Fester. Cause wounds inflicted by bio and miasma spells to fester, dealing damage with a potency of 150 for one effect and 300 for both. So essentially, it deals 150 if you only have one dot on the target, or 300 if you have both dots on the target. This is one of your best abilities, because as you can see, it also requires ethereal attunement. So far, we have 3 abilities that require it. That is Fester here, Bane, and Energy Drain. Now, the reason this is important is because using up these little crystals that we gain with ethereal attunement is very important to go into Dreadworm stance, which we're almost there, so hang on a second. Then, Tribind deals unaspected damage with a potency of 30 to target and all enemies nearby it. Additional effect bind, duration 20 seconds. Dreadworm stance effect, this is important. Removes bind effect, increases potency by 70, and reduces MP cost. So as you can see, this is generally a bind a bunch of groups if you pulled something very big in a dungeon by accident. But when we're in Dreadworm stance, this becomes your general purpose AoE spell, which is honestly the only spell we actually have that deals AoE damage that isn't a dot. So yeah, very important to remember that one, especially in Dreadworm stance. Then, Enkindle commands pet to use its signature attack. We'll go over that once we actually get into the pets. Now, Pain Flare deals unexpected damage with a potency of 200 to target and all enemies nearby it. So once you get this, because it deals 200, it replaces Energy Drain as your instant damaging ability here. This only deals 150, it costs 1. This deals 200 and also costs 1. So this replaces that for, essentially for the rest of the time. Then we get to Ruin 3. We already went over that at the beginning. Then Tri-Disaster. This one is important because, as you can see, inflicts target with both Bio 3 and Miasma. Additional effect, inflicts target with Ruination, increasing the potency of Ruin spells used against target by 20 by 20 potency, not 20%, 20 potency, and it lasts 15 seconds. Now, what does this mean? This means that if you use this on a target, it will instantly be inflated by that, but it will also receive more damage. Your rune spells against it will have an extra 20 potency. Now, the problem here is that, as you can see, it has a 60-second recast timer. And if we go over here into Bio 2, as you can see, it only lasts 30 seconds. Even if you go into Bio 3 and Miasma 3, they still only last 30 seconds. So even if you start the battle with this, you're going to have to hard recast Bio and Miasma after 30 seconds. So this, the most important use for this, from what I've been able to see, is to use it right before you enter Dreadworm stance, which we're about to talk about. Now, here we go. This is the first very fun thing that we get as summoners. So, first off, increases magic damage dealt by 10%. Very nice little buff there. Duration 16 seconds, it's okay. Additional effect, resets Tri-Disaster recast timer. So as you can see, the moment you enter Dreadworm stance, this goes off cooldown instantly, so that's nice. Then, additional effect, removes the bind effect of Tri-Bind, and so as we already mentioned, Tri-Bind here, it deals 100 potency of damage and no longer binds, and it's a lot cheaper when we're in Dreadworm stance. Additional effect. Let's see. Oh, okay, that was it. Anyway, can only be executed when Ethereal Attunement stack is 3 and Demi Bahamut is not summoned. We'll go over that once we get to level 70 abilities. Ethereal Attunement is achieved upon executing an Etherflow action, cannot execute Etherflow while under the effect of Dreadworm stats. So what does that mean? So if we go, let's say, let me target a little dummy over there. No, not you, him. So when you use Etherflow, you get your little 3 crystals, and when you're very low level, around below level 50, when you use an ability that requires one of these, they go away and they go dark, as you saw in the beginning of the video. However, once you get Dreadworm stance, they no longer go dark. Instead, they go like this. As you can see, they switch over to this little Bahamut head. Give me a second, let's walk away from that so he stops attacking it and then the music calms down again. There we go, okay. So what is the use of this? Well, the point of this is that we want to get these 3 stacks of, let's say, Bahamut heads as quickly as possible so that we can actually go into Dreadworm stance, which requires all 3 of these charges. And once we actually go into that, I personally use Tri-Disaster before I go into this stance because, as we mentioned earlier, this Ruin 3, which you get where is Ruin 3? Oh, at level 54, no longer has a cast timer. So that means that every 2.36 seconds you can cast this on the target. And if you use Tri-Disaster right before you switch into Dreadworm stance, it'll take 20 potency extra damage from your Ruin spells, which you're going to be spamming while in that form. So that is something I personally do. I'm not really sure what to say other than that when it comes to that, because as I mentioned earlier, every god I found was completely different, so yeah. Now lastly, Death Flare. Sounds fancy, doesn't it? Deals unexpected damage to target and all enemies nearby it with a potency of 400, so very powerful for the first enemy, 10% less for the second, 20, 30, and yeah, down to 50% for our remaining enemies. So it goes down by 10% for every additional target that it hits. Can only be executed while in Dreadworm stance. Dreadworm trance fades upon execution. So basically, this ends Dreadworm stance, so you want to use it at the very, very end. And it's basically how you end that form. And now we go into the actual Stormblood abilities, which are interesting. First, we get Ether Pact, which orders the pact to execute Devotion, and this basically increases the party's healing and damage by 5%, and I think that's it. But we'll go over that in a little bit. Now, this is an upgrade to Bio 3, upgrade to Miasma 3, and this, as you can see, is where things get very, very fun. Oh, here's Devotion. Increases damage dealt and reduces damage taken by all party members within a 15 yalm radius by 2%. Hooray. Also increases healing magic potency for all party members by 5%. So technically you want to use that every single time it's up because it's a 2% increase in damage and 5% increase in healing for everybody. Now, the thing that everybody wants to know, summon Bahamut. Summons Demi Bahamut to fight by your side each time you use an action on a target, so literally anything we do. Demi Bahamut will execute Worm Wave on the same target, duration 20 seconds. Dreadworm Ether cost 2, I'll go over that in a little second. Cannot summon Demi Bahamut unless a pet is already summoned. Current pet will leave the battlefield while Damien Bahamut is present, and return once gone. Cannot use while under the effect of Dreadworm's trance. Okay, so what did all of that mean? So that means that when we actually summon Bahamut at level 70, every time we launch a spell at our target, he is going to hit him with Worm Wave, which is this, which is a potency of 160 and has a recast timer of 1.5 seconds. Now, if we look at all of even our Ruin spell, it has a recast timer of 2.36. So if we want to maximize the amount of Worm Waves that are launched at the target, we need to literally alternate our spells every 1.5 seconds so that this is spammed as soon as it comes off cooldown. But because our Ruin spells have a recast timer of 2.36, it's launch this, wait a 1.5 seconds, and then launch an instant spell like Fester or Pain Flare, and 1.5 seconds later cast this again, and you generally just keep doing that until you run out of things to cast. And yeah, however, we're not done. Enkindle Bahamut. I'm not really sure why they made this a completely separate spell instead of just fusing it with Enkindle, but this is the fun part. Orders Damien Bahamut to execute Akmorn, the most powerful ability we have, technically. Deals unexpected damage to target and all enemies nearby it with a potency of 680. Very powerful. Not as powerful as the Samurai 3 CO ability, but you get the idea. Can only be executed while Damien Bahamut is summoned, and it has a... technically it's this, recast timer of 13 seconds. So in the 20 seconds that Bahamut is out, you can cast this twice. So as soon as I summon Bahamut, I always cast this immediately. That way I have the entire rest of the time. So in case I forget that it's just because I'm running or something, I can cast it again. Now let's talk about Bahamut here. Actually, before we actually get into that, we have a lot more bits to go through. First, roll. Now, usually you would never grab something like Arrow here. However, because Bahamut attacks the target every single time we inflict the target with a spell or ability, grabbing this means that we can actually use this to cause Bahamut to attack, even though it's technically not one of our spells. So grabbing this is definitely useful once you reach level 70. Aside from that, you also want Swift Cast. Obviously, there's no reason you don't want it. And I personally always grab Sure Cast here because being immune to knockbacks and draw-ins is always very, very useful in endgame encounters, honestly. Two of them are in Al Amigo against the final boss that shoves you away with wind. You can use that on there to be immune to that. And against the Shinryu, you can use that to avoid the knockback from the tidal wave, which can knock you off the platform. So that's why I really like that ability. Now, if you want to be more useful, you can also grab Apocastasis here, which reduces a target party member's magic vulnerability by 20%, so that goes on the tank. Very nice ability, and if you put it on a macro that automatically targets your target's target, you can use it very, very easily. And other than that, you might consider Diversion, maybe Erase. Other than that, those are the only three I personally use. Traits, so what is important here? Stacking it with 3, so that's that. Oh yeah, Ruin Mastery changes Rule 1 to Ruin 3. And Enhanced Ruin here grants a 50% chance that a pet action will trigger further Ruin, upgraded Ruin 2 to Ruin 4, which is a much more powerful instant version of it. And Enhanced Enkindle, here we go, reduces Enkindle recast time by 10 seconds when Enhanced Ruin 2 upgrades, so basically whenever there's procs. So let's go back up to actions, and here we go, Ruin 4. Deals 200 potency instead of 150, and it is an instant. So if we go, let's see, this upgrades Ruin to, this upgrades this. So it bumps it from 100 all the way up to 200 on a 50% chance on each action from your pet. So as you can see, having your pet out is extremely crucial so far. And Enhanced Dreadworm Stance grants Dreadworm Ether upon the end of Dreadworm Trance. Now this is what you need to stack in order to be able to summon Bahamut. So once Dreadworm Stance ends, you can actually summon Bahamut basically instantly. However, you don't want to, and I'll go over that in a little bit. Lastly, pets. So I told you that our little Ifrit little guy here is your main pet for single target damage. And the reason is because, as you can see, deals fire damage with a potency of 110, 135 potency. It has Radiant Shield, which delivers an attack with a potency of 50 every time damage is suffered, and that goes on pretty much everybody that's nearby him. Additional effect increases target's physical damage taken by 2%. Duration 4 seconds. When Obey is active, blah blah blah. And then Flaming Crush, 110 to everybody near, and Inferno, 200 to all enemies in a cone before it. And with a little dot. Now, if we compare that to the one for Garuda, which is our caster type pet, let's see, Windblade, 110, same as Crimson Cyclone here. Now, Area Blast. Deals wind damage to the points of 250 to target and all enemies near it, executed when Master uses Enkindle. This is the equivalent of this. So as you can see, 250 to target and all enemies nearby it, near to all enemies. But this technically deals more damage with the dot. However, let's see, what else do we have here? Oh yeah, Shockwave pushes back with 90, Aerial Slash 90 to target and all enemies nearby it. There we go. And Contagion increases the target's magic damage taken by 10%. So as you can see, Garuda is generally more useful for lots of little mobs, and you want little Ifrit out for bosses and everything else. Now, if you're lazy, you can always leave Ifrit out, and he will do some AoE damage, although not as much. But yeah, that's pretty much our pets, and that covers most of our abilities. Now, let's go over what the quote-unquote rotation is. So, as a summoner, what you want to do is you want to have Bahamut out as often as possible, so you're spamming abilities as often as possible, so he is attacking them as often as possible. So how do we accomplish that? Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to get past our first phase, which is this, which is the Ether Flow phase. So what we need to do is we need to charge this up as quickly as possible by using 3 abilities that require Ether Flow. Luckily for us, 3 of those abilities are instant cast. Those being Ether Drain, which you learn not to use as you're leveling up, but at level 70 you want to use. Bane, which you absolutely definitely want to use. Or Pain Flare, if there's nobody else nearby. And Fester, if there's only one target. So what we're going to do is, generally speaking, hold on, I'm going to put my pet on. Stay. There we go. Stay. Don't attack this thing. Okay. So generally how I start fights is start with Miasma and then put Bio. And then I would use Fester, this, and either Bane or Energy Drain to get the last charge here. After that, we can finally go into Dreadworm Stance. Now, as we mentioned earlier, Dreadworm Stance is going to reset Tri-Disaster automatically. And because this is instant, we want it to be available while Bahamut is out. So, what are we going to do? We are going to use it right before we actually go into Dreadworm Stance so that it instantly resets and it takes more damage from our Ruin spells, which become instant in Dreadworm Stance. So, make sure the target is afflicted with everything. Then we're going to cast this and then into Dreadworm Stance, and here we go. And at this point, we spam Ruin. Also, making sure that all of our pet's 3 abilities, Enkindle, Rouse, and Ether Pact, are always on cooldown. Now, we are going to end it with that. That is Pain Flare, and as you can see, it deals decent damage, but it will always instantly end this phase. And as you can see over here, our little Bahamut here has appeared. This is also our Dreadworm Trance bar. And as mentioned earlier, every time we go out of Dreadworm Trance, we get 1 charge. So this, with a little golden horns, shall we call it, is 1 charge. So let's go and get our second charge as quickly as possible, shall we? So cast this, and let's go with this one here. And we spam Ruin yet again. So as you can see, while in Dreadworm Stance, we cannot accumulate any Ether Flow. And end it. There we go, and Bahamut is ready to be summoned. However, we do not want to summon him instantly because we want to make sure we have Ether Flow available to us while he is out, because this gives us access to 3 instant spells that we are going to go alternating so that he does as many abilities as possible on the target. So, keep your dots up on the target and make sure your pet is out and everything else. So, we are about to get Bahamut out, so let's reset this here. There we go, he's reset. Let's put it on, plays, where's guard? There's guard. Okay, so we are about to summon Bahamut, and we want to be sure we have Ether Flow ready for this phase. Now, during this phase, as I mentioned earlier, we want to launch an ability every 1.5 seconds so that he can attack every 1.5 seconds, which is the recast timer on his main ability. And we also want to make sure that we use Enkindle Bahamut twice during his summon phase, so that he does as much damage as possible. So how are we going to do that? Well, because we're going to rely on that, we're no longer going to be using Ruin 3, which is a cast timer. We're going to be using Ruin 2. It has 30 less potency, but is instant, which is what we want. After that, we're going to be using up our 3 Ether Flow charges to put in between those, so that we actually afflict the target with something and Bahamut attacks it. So, I usually always go with Ruin, into Fester, then back to Ruin, then... actually, no. You want to go with Pain Flare first, because this deals more... Let's see, that's... Actually, no, yeah. It's Ruin 2 into Fester, then Ruin 2 again, then into Pain Flare, and then Ruin 2 again into another Fester, and now at this point, we've used up all 3 of our Ether Flow charges, so those are no longer available to us. So we need to find more abilities that we can afflict the target with in between our Ruin spam. So, this is why we always want Try Disaster available to us. It afflicts the target with something, and because once we exit Dreadworm, once Bahamut leaves, we are going to be able to go straight into Dreadworm Trance using Try Disaster right before Bahamut leaves is going to leave the target vulnerable to Bane, which is what we're going to be doing because we're going to enter Dreadworm stance as soon as Bahamut leaves. So using this at the end is better. So this is why we grabbed Addo with from our role class abilities. It afflicts the target with something, and so Bahamut considers it in order to attack. And then from there, I do believe that is every single instant ability that we can afflict it with at that time. So, let's do it, shall we? Let's make sure it is afflicted with this. And summon, here we go. Instantly cast that. So as you can see, I am alternating my abilities so it attacks as often as possible. Attack Morn, and use that. And we go into Dreadworm Trance, and we spam Flare again. Make sure our pet is doing its thing. Cast that again. And that is generally what you're going to be doing as a summoner, as you can see. So now, I'm not sure if you paid attention, but if you saw, I was not spamming my abilities as soon as they were coming off cooldown while Bahamut was on the field. That's because you can't cast abilities faster than Bahamut can attack with it. So you want to make sure that he just attacked so that he receives the new order to attack from you hitting the target. So let's charge up again and do it one more time, shall we? So let's afflict this with everything here. Straight into Fester, into that, into this, afflict it with that, straight into Dreadworm Trance and spam. Now, I am not sure if going into Dreadworm Trance as quickly as possible is what you want to do. But it is what I like to do because having Bahamut out as often as possible is what you want to do. Now, as you can see, we need to wait 30 more seconds before we can use Ether Flow again. But luckily, because as soon as Bahamut leaves, we can enter Dreadworm Trance, we already technically had one charge. So let's do this. But because we want Ether Flow for Bahamut, we still need to wait those 30 seconds before summoning him. Sorry. So we're going to just wait until he's done with that. And now this time we're going to spam all of our abilities as quickly as possible and see how many times Bahamut actually attacks, shall we? Here we go. So here we go. Start with Akmorn. And that, and that, and that. Okay, so as you saw there, because I was trying to spam abilities as quickly as possible, I was losing focus of where I was, losing focus on what abilities I'd already used and everything else, and I'm not sure how many times Bahamut actually attacked. However, it did look like he wasn't attacking as often to me, but I might be wrong. In editing, I'll probably have placed some numbers as to the number of Bahamut attacks, but I have no idea what that is. But from what I read, your goal is to have Bahamut use both Akmorns here, so have both Enkindle Bahamuts, and at the very least 11 worm waves while he is summoned. So in 20 seconds, you want to cast Enkindle Bahamut twice, and you want to cast at least 11 spells on the target instantly so that Bahamut attacks him 11 times. That is your goal as a summoner. Cast 11 spells while Bahamut is out. So let's try that one more time, this time counting how many spells we actually have ready, shall we? Let's end it as quickly as possible. There we go. Now, unfortunately, we do have to wait an entire minute for this, because we want this available with Bahamut, so yeah. There we go, he is ready, but Aetherflow is not. So, let's see, how many spells can we actually cast while he is out? So, it is first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Excellent. So that, using up all of our instant spells, we're already at 11. And if we weave in both Enkindle Bahamut there, that should be enough to pretty much fill out his entire timer, except by 3 or 4 seconds, in which we're still going to be spamming Ruin. So, okay, we're pretty much ready. So, let's get ready to count, shall we? Now, something I'm thinking is that instead of casting Enkindle Bahamut instantly, is first cast the Ruin, so you start with Worm Wave, and then go into Enkindle. However, something I do need to tell you about Bahamut is that he, unlike your pet, which is constantly attacking your target, Bahamut will follow you around if you get too far away from him. So once you summon Bahamut, you basically need to stand relatively still so that he can actually attack. I'm not really sure why he needs to be around you, but that's just how it is. So are you ready to count? Here we go. Aetherflow is ready. Let's go. There he is. Start with that. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So yes, there we go. We were able to cast exactly 11 spells in between the him landing and then him leaving, along with the 2 Enkindle Bahamuts that we need to cast. Steady. Get back here. Now, I did mention that Bahamut acts like sort of a lost puppy in that if you get too far away from him, he starts following you around instead of attacking. There we go. Let's just go into Worm Whiff and let it go away, and then we're going to cast another one. And I'll show you how much you can actually walk away from Bahamut before he actually starts following you around, instead of attacking. Yes. Aetherflow's about to run right now. There it is. Now this one again. There we go. All we gotta do is wait another minute for him. Now, is there anything I am missing from here? Is there anything ability I missed? Not that I'm aware of. Oh yeah, Shadow Flare has a 1 minute recast timer, and it puts it out on the target for that. So you want to make sure that that is also always on cooldown, but because it is a ground-oriented dot, aiming it properly can be annoying because the boss can move, or whatever it is you're trying to hit will go away, and so on and so forth. Okay, 15 seconds to go until the last Bahamut. Only this time we're going to be casting stuff while we're moving, so we can actually see how far away we can move away from him, so he can actually attack. Okay, here we go. There we go. Okay, ready? Okay, now we're gonna do this while moving. Now, as you can see, as long as we are always casting something, he will stop and attack, but if we, for some reason, stop casting anything because we run away from the boss, either because we arrived on phase 2 on Shinryu, or because we can no longer attack the boss, or for some other reason, he will literally just follow you around. So, yeah, that is what a summoner is like in Stormblood. So remember, at least for me anyway, it's go into Dreadworm stance as quickly as possible so you can get your charge, what's it called? Cannot be executed, blah, blah, blah. Ethereal Attunement is achieved upon executing an initiative action? No. Cannot execute? No. What's it called? Oh, increases trans... Okay. Yeah, the transgouge, that's what it is. So, we want to enter this so we can deal damage and get our charges in the transgouge as quickly as possible so that we can summon Bahamut as quickly as possible so that we can then spam abilities as, not as quickly, but in a decent rotation as possible so we can do as much damage as possible. Does that make sense to you? Because that's the way I'm playing and it seems to be working so far. So, let's go over everything very quickly, just to make sure we get everything down. Make sure your dots are always on all the time. Make sure your pet's 3 activatable abilities are always on cooldown. There's no reason not to. Make sure Shadow Flare is on the target, although you will be forgiven for forgetting to put it on with everything that's going around in a boss fight. Make sure you always start off with your Ether Flow ready and use all 3 abilities as quickly as possible so you can enter Dreadworm Trance as quickly as possible so you can spam abilities. And when that ends, you finish off with Death Flare, and that'll give you your Transgouge buffs. But remember to always have another Ether Flow ready for Bahamut so you can spam abilities as quickly as possible. Now, hopefully all of that I said and done and shown makes sense to you. It took me a while to get the hang of it, but now that I finally got the hang of it, it makes sense to me, and I feel confident in that my damage, although not absolutely maximized to every single decimal point, is definitely good enough for pretty much anything you might want to be doing. So yeah, the Summoner. So anyway, thank you for watching, and we will see you next time for the Samurai, which is already level 63, I believe, and I'm gonna get back and do a little bit more of that once it's done. So yeah, anyway, thank you for watching, and we will see you next time. We are reading a very boring book, aren't we?